Hello and welcome to the Pixelated Realms Gamecast, your guide through the digital landscape, untangling the latest and greatest of video game fun. I'm your host, Tyler Salerno, and alongside me today is my friend Dustin. And as you may have noticed, Alex is not joining us today as he is a little bit under the weather, so we hope he is recovering.
AKA a little bit of a bitch.
AKA should have had more vitamin C, man. Anyway. So Dustin and I are gonna have some discussion today. Thank you for joining us as always. We're excited to be here. We're excited to talk about some video games. And as always, what have you been up to lately, Dustin? Let's get into it.
I have been adding new One Piece waifus to my phone background. This is one of my new ones of Nami. Very happy about it.
So official. Truly official art right there.
Yeah, exactly. They're like AI generated. I don't know. I'm on a couple Facebook groups and that's what pops up for me, but I dig it.
Recommended content is a hell of a thing, isn't it?
Dude, the algorithms are insane. It really upsets me though, because sometimes they'll throw manga, like the latest manga groups that post the fucking like the newest chapters, and I'm like, you motherfuckers, and I just instantly block that page because I don't read the manga.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But
anyway, I hate spoilers of any kind.
I know, it's the worst. I mean, like, if you're posting the manga pages like in the first like week, I don't care if that's what your group does. Like, if you know your group pops up for people who aren't in your group, you're an asshole.
Well, that happens to me for One Piece all the time, because I'm just like, I like to watch my One Piece in spurts. Like, I'll like not watch for 2 years, and then I'll just watch like 30 or 40 episodes, right? Because it's a long running show. And then like the Gear 5 stuff came out, and there was just no way to avoid it. Like, I knew it happened because there was no way for me to avoid it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I did watch Red for the first time this week, and it was really good. Really good. The soundtrack is phenomenal.
Wow.
I hope they bring Oda into the manga or anime, because she is a canon character, but she's never appeared in the anime yet.
Yeah.
Outside of that movie.
Yeah, there is that part of we were in the current anime where they're like, oh yeah, and this part in Red happened, and then they kind of like come back, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. But anyways, we really need to record an anime episode one of these days. It's just like a little side episode.
Anime video games, there's a lot of good ones.
I know there are, honestly. So, you know what? The One Piece, there is a One Piece game coming out. So we'll use whenever that comes out, we'll play it, and then we'll fucking just talk about the anime instead.
I mean, I've played like quite a few of the One Piece games. Like there's like the Dynasty Warriors-esque One Piece one. I think that's like a really good format for One Piece, because you're like blowing through these nobody characters, but then you have to go fight like the big tough dudes. Like that's always been like the Dynasty Warriors way, and it works really well for anime. So, like,
I honestly think Sea of Thieves is such a perfect like example of what you could do with One Piece. Like, because it's just like all these islands. Like Sea of Thieves literally could just be the Grand Line. Like, you drop anchor, or like you drop into the world, and like you're all these islands, and you can like use your log post to like travel around and do stories on each one. I think it could be like a really good like foundation for creating like a fun multiplayer One Piece game.
Did you ever play Lost Ark?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's kind of like, I mean, it's an MMO, right? It's done by a Korean developer, and it's like similar ARPG, like, Diablo kind of esque. But like in that, you like go to these islands, you do these long quest chains, which are actually like really, I was like very impressed with that game, even though I didn't put more than like 15 hours into it. But you get a ship eventually, and you go around to these different islands, and I was like, this is kind of One Piece, man. I'm like a character with with the team going from island to island. And I thought it would be like, honestly, I want One Piece. I want like a One Piece MMO. I want us to be like the new pirate era, and everyone just like, you start your character. They'd have to distinguish. I think they'd probably just give everyone the chance to have a devil fruit. Like you pick out of the categories, right? You could be like one of the 3 categories of devil fruits, or you could be a non-devil fruit user, like swordsman, this, that, there would be like something like that. But then you would just, you'd have infinite islands to go and mess up, things around and level up and do your thing.
If they did that, I would really want them like where you embark on an island, and obviously like you'd be in your own instance because you couldn't do this across the whole world. It would just be insane.
Right.
But like when you land on an island, you have your own instance, and you can kind of decide. Like there's 3 different like ways you can do this island. Like one,
That would be
you
cool.
could like pillage and destroy, you know, or you could like help the village like solve a problem, or you could just land on the island and like be a merchant and like buy goods that you need and then like explore and leave. And it's kind of like all 3 levels of like what you can kind of do in One Piece. You know, like do you want to be like the asshole pirate? Do you want to be more like the Straw Hats, or do you want to just kind of be like a merchant trader and not necessarily like acting like a pirate, but you know, kind of like what they do when they go to the island right before they head into the Grand Line, where Roger was executed.
Yeah. Log Island.
Yeah, you know, so yeah, it'd be kind of interesting if you, like, you know, again, you have to like each crew would need their
That
own
would be the starting
instance.
town, you know? Like it's
Yeah.
I think it would be a fun if there was like a really cool One Piece game that was like that. Like if it was like a Mass Effect style experience, like that would be really cool. You are a character, you devise a crew, and you go through, you know, the series of stories and have a climactic ending.
Yeah, you like
Or
interact with
yeah.
the Straw Hats and other crews along the way. Like you help them with a mission or whatever. You
But
know.
like, or you could do like MMO style where everyone's like a crew member, and then you try to bring, you know, anytime games try to make like the pirate crew thing, it goes a little awry. But yeah, One Piece is a big topic. We'll have to make that our main topic one of these days.
Yeah, but other than that, you know, lots of news this week. So you know,
Oh yeah, that's true.
you know, like the big one that I saw. Well, there's been a couple. We're going to talk about a couple later, but
Yeah.
I guess the quickest one to go through is like so PlayStation. For people that don't know, like PlayStation has their own official blog, and it's positioned as editorial, like a news site, but it really is owned by PlayStation, the PlayStation writers. So it's a little bit more of a collaborative when they work with like a studio, because normally I would say like when we've done this when we were working with Xbox or PlayStation or EA, like we know what the questions are ahead of time. If it's on video, they'll let us re-record if we didn't like the answer. So it's very collaborative because it's not really editorial. It's more like, you know, like not paid content either, but it's a partnership, right? Like they're your partner,
Sure. Organized
publisher,
content. Yeah.
you know. So Neil Druckmann, the head of Naughty Dog, did an interview with PlayStation this past week that came out, and he, you know, I didn't read the whole thing, but there's one quote that got a lot of attention because at the end of this quote, it was said, or it was positioned that he said that like this new Naughty Dog game that they're working on, like, will potentially change the way video games are viewed in the mainstream, and like he got a lot of shit from this from the community and from games media because that is just so oversaid at this point. You know, like I keep using this as
Even
an
with
example.
GTA 6.
Yeah, you know, or like No Man's Sky, or like the new game that the No Man's Sky is making when he was on stage at TGA's.
We created
and was like,
the whole world.
yeah, you know, but it's like there's this Bill Burr joke where he's talking about Steve Jobs, and it's really funny because Bill Burr is like, you know, Steve Jobs is up there, and he's like, the world was one day or one way, and then Steve Jobs came, and the world was a new way, you know, and it's really funny because he's making fun of Steve Jobs, you know, saying that like, you know, he really didn't do that much, and you know, I don't have an opinion on that really, anyways, but that's the way like these quotes are taken, where it's like, dude, like the fucking ego of someone saying that, of like, my game is literally going to change video games.
Right.
You know,
it comes off pretentious pretty much no matter what.
And 99% of the time, it doesn't meet those expectations. I mean, like, look at Skull and Bones. Oh, this is a quadruple game.
Quadruple
game. You know, I mean, just setting your developers up to get shit on. And but then Neil Druckmann was like, fuck that. Like, I didn't say that. I did not say that. So he actually posted this very long, like word for word, the transcript of his actual quote, and like that wasn't even in there.
Wow.
So like the PlayStation team took a shit ton of liberty in reframing his longer answer into a shorter answer. And so people obviously backed off nil about it. But as a PR person in the games who's done those kind of articles before, I have a very, very difficult time believing that at the very least, Naughty Dog PR didn't sign off on those answers. Like, I guarantee someone at Naughty Dog
At least looked at it.
signed off on those answers. Or like, and obviously PlayStation PR did, like, without a doubt. There's a chance that Neil didn't see the final piece. But if he didn't, again, someone that he trusts very much was like, this is good to go. You know? So, you
I
know.
just feel like this is more to the heart of like how we all want to like, we as in like consumers and the media and just people in general, like want to find a story and everything, right? So like we want to find controversy, and so people are gonna take the juiciest bit, and just like slap it onto something. And yes, sure, I'm sure Nintendo, I'm sure PlayStation could have done more to like help that, but also it's just like I feel like a good like chunk of the time, maybe like 90% of the time, whenever you see some crazy quote from someone in the game industry, it's usually taken out of context. And usually if you read the whole quote or at least get like a greater context, I'm like, oh, that's a reasonable thing to say, so it's just, we're just trying to find a sensation, the quadruple A thing, right? It's like that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but like if and honestly maybe it was, but like I just felt like there was
that
like
was for sure.
That one was probably one of the more ridiculous, but like it's just funny how like we're just looking to like kind of pick apart people as a online community sometimes, and I'm just like, all right, man, just let the guy talk. Like he only has so many words he's allowed to say.
Yeah, definitely. And like people also get mad at the stupidest shit. Like this is brought up a bazillion times over the last 5 years, but the guy at fucking Diablo Immortals who was like, we all have cell phones. Like,
dude, I was there.
That guy
that
wasn't
day,
being malicious. Like, he was just trying to say, like, hey, guys, like, we all have phones, So it's like, and then that got latched onto by the community.
So it's kind of interesting, actually. So I want to give my this is real firsthand experience of that event, because I was there in the audience. So that we were at that BlizzCon. That was like the second BlizzCon I believe I went to, maybe the third. And we're sitting in the main hall. The whole thing goes through. They're doing their announcements, and like we're waiting for like a big announcement. Like there wasn't like anything big. It was things that you like expect at BlizzCon. Like, hey, we're doing a new update for World
an expansion
of Warcraft.
for Hearthstone.
Yeah, it was
an
like,
expansion for this. Like
it didn't like it wasn't bad. It was just like there's usually like the first BlizzCon I went to, they dropped classic WoW. I almost had a heart attack. They dropped like the Samira Overwatch character, which was just a really cool like thing to happen. They like hacked the screens and she came into like BlizzCon.
Yeah.
And so like it was just like when they came out and said Diablo Immortal, we were expecting Diablo 4, not Diablo Immortal. And so it was a bit disappointing, but like the crowd, I don't know. I feel like, to me, the people around me, like, yes, we're all a bunch of angry gamers, I guess, but like, I don't know. People are like, oh, that's kind of disappointing, but they still like went about their day. It wasn't until like a few hours later when like we were like looking at our phones and stuff, and they were like, oh, the internet is pissed off about this Diablo thing, and everyone's giving him shit about that comment about, you have phones, don't you? So it was like, I kind of felt like the internet was a little bit more pissed off than the people who are actually at the event, albeit, don't get me wrong, there's definitely
also
people
like
yelling
people at BlizzCon are also, you would say, you're like most hardcore loyal Blizzard fans, so they're mostly gonna swallow that pill no matter what and like be happy about it.
You say that, but like I remember sitting there at one of these BlizzCons and like just listening to this like group of like I don't know what game they played, but like they just sat there and crapped on every single thing every person said. Like they were the coolest person in the hall. And I just want to say to our audience, like, don't be that person, man. Don't pay money and show up at an event to like just talk crap about everything that's happening. Like you could somehow do it better, man. Gotta
Hey,
be better
you
than that.
literally pay $300 a person to go there and have a bad time.
And like you think you look
joke's
cool
on
in
you,
front of
bro.
your like guild mates that you don't see every day. Like it was just you definitely have some interesting interactions. But yeah, that was definitely an interesting experience. Speaking of interesting experiences, we had a recently I can't go an episode without mentioning Warhammer, and recently there was it was called like the Skull like festival showcase. So they were showcasing all the most current and like up-to-date Warhammer games. So I figured that'd be a great thing to talk about a little bit today.
Go
So
off, bro. We know you love it. Go off.
I do love it, although I'm taming that love is finally petering a little bit. Not it's still strong, but like not obsessively strong, which is
Yeah, Alex
good.
and I
It's
were
healthy.
talking about it because I was asking him at Games Beat Summit if like you're kind of like Jake, where like Jake will get like obsessed with something and then like just like drop it instantaneously. And so he's like, yeah, kind of, but he's like, I actually think Tyler will stick with Warhammer for the long term. Maybe not as hardcore as he is right now, but
Correct.
like this is not going to be something that's like he likes for
I
a
won't
month or two
forget it.
and then goes away.
No, I don't usually forget my hobbies. I just like peter out a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at this school showcase, they announced some really cool stuff. So among that was there's going to be a Warhammer Mechanicus 2. So that was a 2017 turn-based game where you play as the Adeptus Mechanicus versus the Necrons. So people are really excited about that. They really enjoyed that game a lot. So that was kind of came out of nowhere. We also got some exciting like DLCs and expansions for current games. So Battle Sector is a really popular Warhammer game right now, and they are getting the Astra Militarum added as a DLC faction, so that's really exciting. We also got a great trailer for the game I am currently obsessed with, which is the Warhammer Rogue Trader series. I just breached 100 hours in that series, and I'm still really loving it, despite a few bugs. So they're getting a new DLC in August, it was. So I'm absolutely super excited for that. Can't wait for that. And of course, what is maybe the most important game is we got some more trailer footage and multiplayer footage of Space Marines 2, which is coming out in September. So that's really exciting. A few things that were mentioned were in the new Space Marines. We are, of course, bringing back a 3-player co-op mode, 3v3 co-op, which looks really fun. Really excited to like customize your own Space Marine with the different colors and the different weapons. There's 6 different classes, which is really interesting. I'm very interested to see how that'll pan out. So along with this really what looks like to be a really fun experience with destroying the Tyranids in a campaign mode, they're also going to have this really great online mode for multiplayer. So that was kind of the most important things to take away from that. And there's still a sale going on. If you are, I think it'll be going on when we release our episode tomorrow. But if you didn't catch it this weekend, there'll probably be another one soon.
Did you mention the skins? Did I miss it?
The skins. Oh, so to tail out our Warhammer discussion, and then we'll do some of our questions here. So as part of this the Skull Showcase, they also announced that there's going to be some new Warhammer skins in none other than, guess the game, Call of Duty, of course. And it's just like, man, like I was watching the chat and I knew this was coming because I was watching the showcase live, and the chat was just like, why are you doing this? Like this is a waste of money and effort. Like why nobody in the community wanted this, nobody asked for this, and yet you're doing it. And I'm just like, dude, like Call of Duty just sucks, man. Like
yeah, well, that's exactly how I feel about this. I was on IGN earlier, and Overwatch 2, which I don't know how many people play Overwatch 2. I've never played it. I just am so disappointed that they didn't launch with the single player stuff and then they killed it entirely.
Yeah. It
But
wasn't deserved to get the time, but it still wasn't a terrible game, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know how many people are still playing, but they just announced this big like Porsche collaboration. They're like Diva skins, and like there's this vote. I think they're gonna like wrap a real Porsche with like a Diva skin, and there's like merch, and it's like, who the fuck asked
for this?
Yeah, and I'm like, Blizzard has just been getting so much bad PR for like so long, and I'm just like, who paid who here? Okay, did Blizzard like go to Porsche and say like, we really need a cool like hip brand to like be in our game? Do you want to do a collaboration with us and we'll pay you? Because like normally it's the other way around. We need to appeal
to the rich. Like what was the pitch? Yeah,
yeah, because like usually like the partner would go to the game and be like, hey, we really want to be a part of this, like. We'll pay you to have our brand in your game. But I honest to God wouldn't be fucking shocked if it was the other way around on this one, where Blizzard was like, we really need like a cool partner. Like, we'll pay you to put your shit in our game.
Why is part of me like just think like there's all these like I say this because I do like Formula One, but like all these people who are like, yeah, like I love motor racing now. Like I'm
Formula
an American.
One is like really oddly like just blown up a little bit.
Oh, in America, it's because of Drive to Survive, but that's like a whole nother topic. But yeah, I'm just like part of me is just like, yeah, as American, we're all into like the European like cars now. So like I'm so biased. But
yeah, I mean, I've wanted a Porsche since I was a kid.
Porsches are super cool cars, but I just don't see what that has to do with Overwatch.
Yeah, I mean, like they're branding her mech as a Porsche, and I'm just like, and she's probably, I haven't seen all of it, but she's probably in like a fire suit, right? Like the race car driver fire suit, I imagine. Right. And I'm just like, it's just weird. It
just I think we'll go back to that this whole segment's question. Who asked for that?
Yeah, seriously.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I know we got some good questions though.
We do. So yeah, we'll dive into some questions here as we usually do. I know I saw a couple of new questions, which is great. Thank you, Ralph, for submitting them in your actual name, which is great because I wasn't confused at all. I think Alex is the one who's been crazy this whole time.
Alex has actually been making up fake names for Ralph. Ralph is just continuously putting his own name. And he's like, what the fuck are these names that like Alex keeps making up for me?
Great. And then I just lost my script. So either way, I was just going to say, before we do that, thank you for watching, and please like, subscribe, and comment. We really appreciate your contributions.
Even if your comment is calling us a piece of shit, which is totally fine, or cretin. Someone called us a cretin this last week. So
wonderful. Cool. It honestly brightens my day usually most of the time. I love to hear these random, they took the time, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I mean, so any PR is good PR, right?
Wonderful. So let's take a look at our questions today. First one, coming from our good friend Ralph. If you could only play one game or game series for the rest of your life, what game would it be?
What's yours, Dustin?
World of Warcraft?
Yep, I think there is enough diverse content and characters, and they've continuously created new content where like the game has been around for 20 years. Like there's no reason to think it won't be around 20 years from now. So, and I've been like super fucking hardcore in that game and I enjoy it. The only reason I don't continue to play it is because it's just too much. I'm not able to be casual. That's my problem. Yeah. Like me, like I think I've told our listeners, like I was like top 5 guild worldwide in like vanilla, and got sucked back in when Classic came out, and me and all my 40-year-old friends were like, we're going to just be chill, guys. We're just be super chill. We all got kids and wives now. That's what we all said, too. And then fucking sitting there raiding like 3 times a week again, playing every night. My wife is like going to kill me. So I just had to like step away.
Get consumables, yeah.
Yeah, I had to just step away because I was like, it's just too much. I can't do it. They're literally in chat right now, and our guild Discord like, Dustin, it's like an hour a week, bro. An hour a week for the new WoW shit. And I'm like, fucking no way.
And then they turn around and be like, it's personal responsibility to show up with all your consumables.
Yeah, so. Yeah, okay. But if I could only play one and I didn't have like all the other commitments, like WoW would be it for sure.
I think WoW is probably a close answer for me, like just for the same reasons you mentioned. And if I could get any game series, I would also get Warcraft, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, and WoW. So like that would pretty much get you set for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick a different answer, let me think. So for the rest of my life, but it can be a series. So like picking Final Fantasy would be pretty open ended. I do like that idea. But I've already beaten most of them, so that might be a little bit boring. Ooh, that's hard.
There's not a lot of long-term live service games like WoW. Right? And there might not be any. I mean, there's like what the fuck is the other MMO? Like MMO is pretty much it, right? Like
well, if you like want to make sure you're getting new content, like sure. Okay,
yeah.
I think I'm gonna go with Final Fantasy because I can say the series, and not only do I have a library of like incredible games, but then I can add any. Not only do I have 2 MMOs, but I have all of future games that I'm allowed to play as well.
You do have 14, right? So
I love 14. It's the game I have the most hours on Steam. So
yeah. So
in fact, when I was really into 14, I was convinced it was a better game than WoW. But
what do we think Alex would pick? A part of me
Destiny.
thinks, I was gonna literally say Destiny. It's gotta be Destiny, right? Like 1 and 2.
Even though he's wrong.
Yeah.
Even though the game I chose for him to pick.
Yeah. I agree. And if you want to even, like, we'll give them a break. It's only 2, even though they've been around a long time. If you want to say, kind of interesting to look at this from a studio perspective, too, because then you could say Bungie, and then you would throw in the first couple Halos with Destiny games, and then you could be like, okay,
that'd be fair.
You might have something there. But then if you say Blizzard as a studio, then like you just have like a fucking wealth of content.
I would take Blizzard then, But
yeah.
That being said, it's still risky. Either way. Anyway, that's a different question. Let's keep going here. So, next question is from Ralph again. With people befriending others through video games, how would you teach your kids about acceptable friendship through online gaming versus stranger danger? I think that's a great question.
It is a great question. So it's not. First, I would say to my kids, like, obviously, don't share personal information. Don't give them your phone number, your address, like depending on what age you're at. If you're like into like college or whatever, you're an adult, like there's a little
you should know already.
But don't be 10 years old and start handing out like your home address to people online. That's the most obvious stuff. I've started playing online Counter-Strike when I was 13, and I literally wanted to like be a competitive player, and I found like a scrims or I found a server that was local in Orange County, and I started playing in that server and all the time, and I eventually made friends with the guild, with that clan. It's not called guilds in Counter-Strike, it's clans, and got invited, and then like we were at Callow, and like I still literally talk to those guys. It's been like 30 years, and they've just been lifelong friends. Like we don't game very much anymore because they all play WoW now. Yeah, we all transitioned to WoW in 2004. But it's like there really are lifelong friend opportunities on games, and so I would definitely encourage my kid to take those risks, and don't be afraid of making friends. But yeah, the biggest, most obvious is, be smart. Don't hand any information you wouldn't to like a stranger on the street, because you ultimately don't know who these people are until you get a little bit older. I would also like not quite the same answer, but I would tell my kid like, honestly, like the importance of not being a prick.
Yeah,
to
that
women,
was where I was gonna go.
but especially to women, like everyone's a little bit toxic when they're like a teenager. It's everyone is.
But I was never toxic. Like I
never
would told someone to like suck my balls.
I was like, go fucking kill yourself, you piece of shit.
I never did that.
Definitely had my rage moments. Most of that stems from the fact that I would play a lot of ranked gaming, though. So I would say that behavior didn't really start for me until I started playing League, as like in my 20s. Or any kind of ranked gaming, Overwatch, because then you have random people you don't know who are like deeply influencing your ability to proceed or with your goals. So that's where like the toxicity is really driven,
Right.
because you're like, you motherfucker, you're throwing, like, you
But then it
literally made
becomes
us do this
this
on
like people like
purpose.
get toxic before, it's like then they start preempting toxicity.
Yeah.
I feel like my answer to that question is like, don't say anything to someone online you wouldn't say to them face to face. And like
That,
also like it's like your responsibility to like be like even more respectful sometimes in a lot of cases, because people are so nasty like that. It's it's like it's okay to joke, but like like remember that these are strangers, and
yeah. Well,
it's going to be taken more literally than you expect.
it's disheartening now, because again, I remember being a teenager and being a little toxic sometimes, and thinking, like being a person again who like played a lot of video games and didn't interact with a lot of girls, because I was gaming so much. And a girl talks in the chat and you're like, oh my god, it's a girl, hi ASL, like, and it was just like, it didn't seem like a big deal back then. And now, obviously I see people take shit way further. There was a thing I think we talked about a couple weeks ago where the guy was like, oh, it's not rape if I'm enjoying it, which is just so
Just
fucking out
like
of line.
verbal assault,
And again, I think if I could tell my kid anything, it would be to help create safe spaces for women gamers. Because now, as an adult, when I see that kind of shit happening, I literally just tell the person, like, why don't you just shut the fuck up? Like, you're the fucking problem. Like, this woman is just trying to enjoy video games, and you are literally harassing her because she's a woman, and like, I will never know what it's like to have someone be toxic at me, literally just for speaking in chat because I'm a girl. I can't even imagine. Like it's just so fucking disappointing that happens. And so if I could contribute by teaching my two sons that that's not the behavior that you want on gaming, and like you're literally creating a space that you love and you're making it worse. So I could help them not do that kind of shit. That'd be my number one goal.
It's important to teach like everyone that like it's supposed to be like a space of fun, and I think that goes to a bigger issue where like people are losing the fun of games when money gets involved in gaming and competition gets involved, right? Same with like football or baseball. People start to like forget about the idea that like, hey, this is a game, like we're supposed to be like having fun,
Yeah.
and like being good to each other, not like insulting each other. So
well, there's a level of toxicity, right, from we're going to move on a second, but the level of toxicity from like poor performance, but then there's also the anonymous nature of the internet, where people feel empowered to be jackasses because there's no real world consequence. Like you said, though, like if it's not something you tell someone in person, you shouldn't say it online either.
Yeah. I mean, it should be no surprise to anyone that like words do affect people, and like here's my ending logic here. And of course, I kind of think about League of Legends because, like, when you start in League, it can be a little bit of a rough experience. Like,
it's fucking awful
in League,
experience.
when I was learning League, the thing I always kept thinking when people like were flaming me was like, dude, you flaming me is making it harder for me to concentrate, and I'm trying to like learn this game. So like, it was just like you're actively taking my mind away from this game and forcing me to like look at your flaming me.
Well, as humans, we're also like, at first you're like, oh my god, I'm trying to do good, I'll try my best, but then it keeps continuing. You're like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, like why would I help this guy win a game?
Yeah, I'm gonna lose on purpose now, or like not play my best because this guy's such a fucking asshole that I don't want to win. I would rather lose and like lose my 15 like RP than or whatever it is, CP.
Then put all my time and effort and brain power into helping this jerk win.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go run around the jungle and be a jackass for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, moving on to our next question, which it's kind of I'll put these two together because they're both related to Call of Duty. So, Ralph was saying X Defiant released this past week, and people are calling it the Call of Duty killer. doubt it will be, but doubt it will be that. But what, in your opinion, is Call of Duty doing differently than all other games that Call of Duty is still the market leader in first-person shooters? Uh, Along with that, if Call of Duty's Battle Pass is so horrendous and yearly games are subpar, why does Call of Duty still lead the market? That's a great question. I
Because
will.
Call of Duty is the Republican and Democratic Party, for a political analogy. It is, people are so used to that
Yeah.
just being the thing
It's like
that,
bread and butter, man.
yeah, like they know what they're getting.
Yeah,
Like they know
you
what
know
it
you're
is.
good.
They don't have to really pay that much attention to the media, to the campaign, to what the media is saying. It's Call of Duty. I have fun with it. That's what I always do. So that's what I'm going to keep doing.
Yeah.
And they're good games. They're not bad games. But I mean, again, like, as two hardcore World of Warcraft people, I had to listen for 10 fucking years every time a new MMO came out. It is the WoW killer. Never happened. Not even close. And this game's not going to kill Warcraft, or not going to. It's not going to kill Warcraft, but it's also not going to kill Call of Duty.
Well, my I would say it's like just like World of Warcraft, just like WoW could never be beaten by any other MMO. It's the same thing with Call of Duty because they basically invented the formula. And no, were they the first? Was it the first first-person shooter? No. Was it first online first-person shooter? No. But it's the formula, like the things that they did in Call of Duty were essentially the landmarks that became the standard first-person shooter. And like, they did, of course, they do have really good quality games for the most part, which I would say only really dwindled in the last, you know, decade, 5 to 10 years. They've been able to, kind of like Blizzard also does, is just go off their own reputation. And like you were saying, Dustin, it's just like what you're getting. I know when I buy a Call of Duty game, I'm probably going to get a really decent, like 2 to 6 hour campaign experience, and then I'll get a fun multiplayer experience that you'll play for, depending on the person, 10 minutes to 10,000 hours.
Yeah, and I think the other big issue too is that for the longest time, at least growing up, Call of Duty always had the competition of Battlefield. Like, it was like two
They were
polarized communities,
PlayStation and Xbox, yeah.
And like people like Battlefield and people like COD, and like they didn't mingle as much. But I think Battlefield, basically since Hardline, which wasn't actually a DICE made Battlefield, but 1 and 5 were both very good. But like I think I've talked about this. The Battlefield formula style game, I think, is just no longer what gamers want.
It's too large format.
Yeah, they don't want the 30 person per team chaotic, like, big ass maps, because we have now been trained as gamers that we have to be able to show how good we are to everyone else with ranks and stats. And Battlefield, like, sure, there are people who play Battlefield who go like 30 and 5, but it's very few and far between. The normal person on Battlefield is probably sitting somewhere around like KDA of about 500, 10 kills, 12 deaths, vice versa. And it doesn't lend it's too chaotic and unpredictable to lend itself to a ranked style game. And I just think that is what we have now been trained to like. So there's not a major competitor to Call of Duty anymore, like a true competitor. Maybe X Defiant will be it. It is maybe Ubisoft.
I mean, yeah, I was looking at it. I'm like, Ubisoft, all right. I'm getting a little less hopeful because,
but I mean, like,
Ubisoft,
Counter-Strike hasn't been able to do it. It's obviously a little bit different. But it's
such a different style. You know what I mean? It's almost like, to me, like Counter-Strike style it's its own world. Call of Duty is its own world. It's like, and it's hard to put them into their own. It's hard to lump like multiple games into categories when it comes to first-person shooters.
Yeah, definitely. Because then you also have like Siege, which I would say actually leans. Siege might be like a kind of like a baby of
it is kind of like a middle ground with like tech.
Because it is like a 5v5, like like elimination,
a secure and objective,
kind of game. But then it's much more like the weapons are much more tactical, and you have classes, with different weapons and shit. So
it feels like, to me, Battlefield fails because nowadays we either want a really quick, like a less than 30-minute experience, right? Which is where our battle arena games come in, right? You want like a quick like match, or you want like a really long, complex war. And like it's in the middle of that. And it just doesn't, it's not quick enough, but it's also not large scale enough at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been in some battlefields that lasted a really long fucking time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that unfortunately Battlefield is living in the past a little bit in terms of what they've created, and we'll see what they do with the next one if and when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think
COD's in a league of its own right now, and it has nothing to fear.
It's just old reliable when it comes to first person shooters, and I mean, the truth is like it's kind of like yes, they have a bad battle pass. I don't like the skins. Like I don't like. It's just there's so many things that don't work for me personally. But like, I am no longer a 12-year-old kid in 20. Like I'm not a young teenager. Like I'm sure if I was a teenager and all I had ever known is this Call of Duty, I would be like, this is a great game. Like, why does the older generation not like this? Like,
Yeah.
Yes, I just happen to have played every Call of Duty over the last 20 years. Like,
yeah, I would say that's the other big thing with Call of Duty is that it's fucking consistent. There is a Call of Duty basically every year.
Yep.
And like look at Battlefield. Like we had 2042 in 2022. 5 came out, I think, in 2020. So it's like it was like a 2-year gap, and now we're like 2 years in and we haven't seen. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a new Battlefield announced during Summer Games Fest. I doubt it, because once 2042 kind of failed, a lot of people left the studio. So I'd be really surprised if we see one this year, but maybe next year. But yeah, again, like it comes out every year, so people always know that it's coming. They can like bank on it. Like who knows when the next X Defiant will come out, or if another one even ever does come out.
I mean, I'm actually like, I don't think I've ever even heard of this game.
I never heard of it until right now.
That makes me just think even more that like it's not like a killer of Call of Duty in any way. Play for free. Oh, looks like I can try it. Interesting. Yeah, it just came out like 6 days ago. Okay. Well, yeah, that's interesting. We'll have to check out X Defiant, see if it's the Call of Duty killer, although I highly doubt it. For me, I'm just one of the World War II weebs in the Call of Duty camp. I'm literally just like, I just want like forever World War II Call of Duties, and I'll be totally satisfied.
Yeah. Before we move off of Call of Duty, one of the topics I actually wanted to talk about is, I don't know if you saw, but the victims of the Uvalde shooting in Texas that happened a couple of years ago, they are suing Activision for Call of Duty specifically because it promotes games like guns like the AR-15. And I cannot stress enough that I feel terrible about what happened in that shooting and any mass shooting. Like I used to own a gun. I got rid of it because I truly believe that if you have an issue with something, you can't just say that you have an issue with it. You need to be a part of the solution. And so I got rid of my gun. And, not that I have a problem with people having them, like Alex, who's a very safe gun owner. But, like I'm super strict on like background checks. Like I think they need to be much more strict. And like guns are just way too easy to get. With that all being said, I absolutely do not think that video games contribute to gun violence. I think that lawsuit is not going to go anywhere. I think it's frivolous. Again, I feel terrible that they lost people, but you can't blame video games for it. Call of Duty did not make that person go and shoot up that school.
There's no,
so
you don't have any like. There's no scientific evidence to back that claim. It's like, and like I agree with everything you said. It's obviously a horrible shooting, and like America clearly has an issue with this particular topic, and it needs to be addressed, and there needs to be things need to change. But trying to blame the company that makes a video game, it's just it's an older style of a witch hunt that we saw in the 90s. You basically see it every decade where some game is blamed for some level of violence, and people who typically are trying to weasel their way into something.
I would
You
not
know,
be
well,
shocked if it's like some fucking lawyer just like contacted these people like,
yeah.
hey, like I saw that this guy like played Call of Duty. Like I bet you we could just get some money from Activision if like you guys just sue them. They'll probably settle for like $100 million.
Well, I mean, the whole video games, and there was a whole thing in the '90s about video games and violence, and you know, I remember like because we grew up in the '90s. Like I remember having friends who weren't allowed to play video games because their parents thought they were going to make them violent, and like it's been proven that there's no correlation to that. The only scientific evidence that's ever been shown is that if children are predisposed to like violent tendencies, that playing video games might encourage that or
It
not
comes
assist
down
in
to
that.
teaching your kids what is right and what is wrong. You know, like I've played a shit ton of violent video games. I've never even had like thought about doing anything violent with guns. You
I would
know,
argue
I'm
the
gonna teach
opposite
my
effect.
kids, you know, the same thing. Like, oh, I'm gonna highly educate them on like gun safety or anything like that, but also like, you know, what is right and what is wrong. You know, like I mean, even Arthur right now, he watches Transformers, you know? So, like, sometimes, like, oh, you dead. You dead. You dead, Dad. You know, and he'll, like, hit me with, like, his Thor axe. You know, you dead. You know, and he's only 4. And so it does, like, I don't love that, you know? But we live in a world where you're not going to be able to keep every violent thing away from your child. And it's up to you as a parent to teach them what is play, what is not, what is real, what is not, what is okay, and what is not. You know, you can't just go and blame a company for doing something. No, that's not what's happening here. In terms of like, obviously they're not blaming
It's
the
more the
company
video
for.
game. Yeah, video games cause violence argument, not this specific lawsuit.
Yeah, it'd be more. This would be more of like if the shooter's parents sued Activision for turning their kid into a killer.
Yeah,
right. That would be more in line with what I'm talking about.
sure.
But it's still at the end of the day, like video games, I don't think cause violence. There's been lots of studies, like you said, that prove that they don't. Um, it's really up to parents to teach their kids right and wrong.
Well, it's kind of, to me, it's an interesting argument because it's like you don't have to touch a video game to be exposed to the violence of our world. You know, like if you exist right now, you see violence. There's no way to avoid that. Like, you know, some really real terrible shit. So it's like as long as, you know, like you said, you know, we're instilling of good values into our children and saying, you know, hey, you understand this is, you know, a fictional environment, a story that's not made, you know, that doesn't exist, you know, that this is just all for fun, you know. um
Yeah, yeah,
it
100%.
it should make a difference. And so yeah, I think this is really just unfortunately a mental health concern, you know, and with these individuals in our country, you know, who are
It's only
perpetrating these
happening
things.
here. Yes, like
Not a
once in a while it happens other
yeah,
places, but I mean, it only really happens here that we have people going in with guns and killing 20, 30 people at a time.
yeah.
So,
And video games are in every country,
yep.
so yeah. So
But you know, it's
yeah,
not in every country. Access to fucking guns like we have
true,
here.
true. So yeah, yeah, but I mean, you know, it's I think that's one of those controversies that it's unfortunate. It's just really sad that we've even come to a place like this. But yeah,
Yeah.
video games don't cause violence, folks. Sorry.
Yeah. So the last thing I saw this week was all this drama about Hellblade 2. So I never
Oh
played
yeah.
Hellblade 1, but a lot of people are pissed. They're saying like, "Oh, game is fucking gorgeous," which I haven't seen it, but I'm assuming it
Oh,
is. It's
the
like
first one was so gorgeous.
the
Yeah.
consensus is that it's a beautiful game, but the campaign, from what people are saying, is only like 5 hours long. So I think the game is $50.
Yeah.
So not quite 70. I think it's 50. I could be wrong.
Okay, I could check.
But the big question is like, this game is advertised as a AAA title. So how long
It
does
is
a
$50.
game? Yeah, how long does a game need to be though to justify a $50 price tag or a AAA title. Like saying it's AAA, like, you know, label on it. Like,
I don't
is
know.
5 hours enough content?
I feel strong about this one. So it's like, okay, I have not beaten Hellblade 1, but I know it's of a similar time frame. Look, it's like I don't think that how much the game costs and how much the game length should almost be tied at all. Like don't get me wrong. Like if the game is an hour long and you paid like $70, like that wouldn't feel great. But like if the game is quality, then I want them and they deserve that $50 of costs. Sorry, cat. And they deserve, you know, that $50 in costs, and I'm willing to pay it. You know, but if 6 hours is the ideal experience for that game, and they feel like an 8-hour story would not tell the tale properly, then I want the 6-hour tale. I want the devs to tell me how I should experience their game.
Yeah.
And if it's in 6 hours, then that's in 6 hours.
And I mean, they didn't charge 70, right? Which is below 50 is below the standard for AAA. But
it's also on Xbox Pass, so you can always pay $15 and
yeah, but then your studio gets shut down. So
and your studio gets shut down.
I say that because Sarah Bond, who I love, is, you know, the head of Xbox. We need people like her. But for her to say about Hi-Fi Rush when she was asked, like, you know, you had this small game that was very popular on Game Pass and won awards. What does it take?
Why'd you get rid of it?
You know, why'd you get rid of it? And then for her to say, oh, well, you know, like success for every game looks different, basically. It's like,
that's just a general
okay, then
answer.
Then you're saying that winning awards and being extremely popular in Game Pass isn't viewed as success for Xbox, right? So bringing it back to Hellblade, too, you know, like, yeah, if you have 10 million people playing a Game Pass, maybe they don't give a shit. Yeah. Because it's just like they're already paying for it, you know. I guess.
I mean, if
I track it, like how many people like signed up for Game Pass and like that was their first game they played, maybe like tracking those kind of statistics.
I mean, the game could have won awards and still not sold a lot. Like that's very, I wouldn't say common, but like it's a thing. Like it's definitely happened, and it's an artistic style game. I love Jet Set Radio, which is like the game that was. You know, Hi-Fi Rush was definitely inspired by Jet Set Radio, which was the flagship game released for the Xbox, the original. Yeah, I just my guess would be that they sold tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 copies. I doubt they're in the millions of sales.
Yeah,
hopefully I'm wrong.
But for me, you know, I think 5 hours is too short. Personally,
really,
I totally.
But it's a narrative game. It's not a battle game. Like you're.
No, but I get that. But like, if you look at like, so for me, I think 20 to 25 hours is the sweet spot for me for a single player campaign. So that's about what Nier Automata is. That's what Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Like COD, the 5-hour COD ones don't do it for you.
But okay, so from someone who worked on Battlefield again, single player campaigns and FPS games like that, they're just throw-ins. Like no one's buying it for that. Like we got more shit with Battlefield 1, I think it was, for having 3 like hour and a half long each single player chapters that you can play. We got more shit for that content because it was so short than we got when we just didn't have single player in the game at all. Like the next one, we just didn't even do it. So that's why
no one does campaigns though nowadays.
Yeah. So like saying like, oh, about COD 5 hours, like no one gives a shit about that single player. Like you're not buying it for the single player. Very, very few. Like you're buying for the multiplayer experience, and that's just a throw-in add-on.
But Hellblade is only a single player experience.
Yeah, but if you look at like, you know, like Inside Out or not Inside, is this Inside? You know, that's like a 3 to 5 hour like short indie experience, and it's like $10. You know, so
I mean,
it's not fair to compare like that.
I just don't think I would play Hellblade 2 for over 10 hours. Like that type of game, I need it to be condensed into a way. Like if I'm not going to be like constantly progressing a character and team and making like vast decisions. Like,
And I should also clarify, like, you can plat the game in 5 hours, not just like I got through the story, like, but like
Interesting.
literally every piece of content available from what I've been reading can be completed within like 5-6 hours. So like, you know, if I can
That seems a
cruise
little,
through,
yeah.
I can cruise through Miles Morales and probably like there are people who have posted run throughs in like 6 hours of Miles Morales, but
Sure.
that is like knowing exactly what to do, just
Okay.
doing the story mode, you know, like not doing all the side quests and all the plats. And again, it's doing it when you've already done it and you're running through and like doing like a speed run basically. So to plat a game like that in 5 hours, I don't know. It feels short.
Yeah.
You know, like
I'll have to. We'll have. Maybe I'll do some homework this week and try to play that one, play the first one and the second one, and try
yeah,
to
it's
experience it
not a big
myself.
time. It's not a big time suck.
All right, exactly. That's why I was like, I'm happy to play that little narrative.
Yeah, you know, but I am torn on it. I think it feels too short to say we're AAA, but I also agree with you that if that is what the best experience is, and that's how it's intended, then cool. I think that the way to get around that is lower the price more.
Yeah.
You know, like you came out at 50, people still feel like that's probably too close to 70 for 5 hours. Like maybe maybe it should have been a $30 game. Yeah, I bet you if it's $30, we're not even having this conversation.
To me, it depends on the quality. 6 hours of super high quality might be worth it to me, as opposed to 6 hours of like an indie experience that's like definitely not. So yeah, I don't know. That we'll just have to see, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll just have to take a look at the game ourselves and make our determination.
Yeah, and it's also inflation probably plays a huge role in this too, because you know
Everything's more expensive.
not everybody's able to buy video games all the time. It's a luxury, and when you buy them, you definitely want to feel like you're getting like maximum value.
Yeah.
You know, but now it's like, oh, I watched like 1.5 Lord of the Rings movies. You know, like
I mean, it's just funny because like so many games though, like you can get great value out of, like Rogue Trader. I just peaked 100 hours in that game. I paid like 30 or 40 bucks for it, you know. So it's just like the math gets a little crazy. It's all about personal value.
You're gonna get 100 hours out of Elden Ring, easy,
Right?
you know. But like again, like then you play
But
Miles
I
Morales, and
haven't played it for 100 hours.
yeah, well, you know, but you get like 20, 25 out of a Spider-Man game, and that still feels great to me. Because again, that's my sweet spot where I'm not spending too much time, but I also feel like it's taking me a while.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
5 feels short.
Yeah,
but
feels a little short, but we'll have to
check it
see.
out.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Any other thoughts or controversies that we wanted to talk about?
Not that I can think of this week, but it's the gaming industry, so I'm sure we'll have more shit next week to talk about.
Love it. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap us up from here. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, once again, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate your contributions, and of course, we will see you all next week, hopefully with Alex feeling a little bit better. All right. Bye-bye.